As I settle into the worn cushions of my living room couch, the world outside my suburban home feels like it's holding its breath. The late evening air slips through the cracked window, carrying the faint hum of crickets, a quiet lullaby that weaves through the stillness. A golden glow spills from the table lamp beside me, painting soft shadows across the walls, and I pull the throw blanket tighter around my shoulders. The warmth of chamomile tea seeps through the mug in my hands, its steam curling upward like a whispered secret. I take a slow sip, letting the floral notes linger on my tongue, and I can't help but feel like this moment is a pause, a rare, fleeting chance to just be. My name is Leona, and at 38, I've learned to cherish these quiet corners of life, the ones that don't demand anything of me, but to simply exist. I've never been one for perfection, though I've spent plenty of years chasing it. Somewhere along the way, I realized honesty matters more. Honesty with myself, with the people I love, with the life I've built. It's not always pretty, but it's real, and that's enough for me. This home, just on the edge of the city, where the skyline is a distant shimmer, is my sanctuary. It's not the biggest house on the block, and the paint on the shutters is starting to chip. But every scratch on the hardwood floors tells a story. Every mismatched throw pillow on this couch holds a memory. This is where I've laughed until my sides ached, where I've cried into the silence of the night, where I've found a kind of happiness that doesn't need to shout to be felt. And so much of that happiness is tied to Harrison, my husband. He's the kind of man who can walk into a room and make it feel lighter, even on the heaviest of days. We've been together for over a decade now, and I still catch myself staring at him sometimes, wondering how I got so lucky. He's not flawless, Lord knows, neither of us is. But he's steady, the kind of steady that makes you believe in anchors. Harrison's got this quiet strength, a way of listening that makes you feel like every word you say matters. He's probably in the kitchen right now, rinsing dishes or humming some off-key tune under his breath, completely unaware that I'm sitting here thinking about him. That's just who he is, unassuming, but always there, like the heartbeat of this house. I set my mug down on the coffee table, the ceramic clinking softly against the wood, and I let my gaze drift to the framed photos on the shelf across the room. There's one of us from years ago, standing on a windswept beach, my hair a wild mess and his arms slung around my shoulders. We're grinning like fools, and I remember that day so clearly. The salt on my lips, the way the sun burned our skin, the way we didn't care about anything but each other. As my mind lingers on that beach memory, I can't help but drift to another moment, just a week ago, that's been replaying in my head ever since. It was a quiet evening in our kitchen, the kind of night where the world outside seems to fade away. The air was thick with the rich, comforting scent of garlic and rosemary from the chicken I had roasting in the oven. I could hear the faint sizzle of it as the timer ticked down, a familiar soundtrack to our evenings together. Harrison and I were sitting at our small wooden table, the one with the wobbly leg we've been meaning to fix for years. A bottle of red wine sat between us, half empty, its deep crimson catching the soft light from the overhead fixture. The atmosphere felt intimate, like it always does when it's just the two of us, but there was something else there too. A subtle tension, like a thread pulled just tight enough to notice. Harrison was quieter than usual that night. He's never been the loud type, but this was different. His fingers kept tracing the rim of his wine glass, slow and deliberate, like he was lost in some thought he wasn't ready to share. I watched him for a moment, noticing the way his brow furrowed, the way his jaw seemed just a little tighter than normal. It wasn't like him to hold back, not with me. So I set my own glass down, the clink against the table louder than I meant it to be, and I asked, "Hey, is everything okay? You seem off?" My voice came out softer than I intended, almost like I was afraid of the answer. He looked up at me then, and there was this mix in his eyes. Hesitation, sure, but also a kind of determination I couldn't quite place. He held my gaze for a beat longer than usual before he spoke, his words slow and measured. What would it feel like if I asked you to do something completely different? To trust me fully? To push the edge? His voice was steady, but there was a weight to it, like every syllable carried something heavier than I could grasp right then. I blinked at him, my heart skipping a beat. I didn't know what to make of it. A nervous laugh slipped out of me, the kind that fills an awkward silence when you're not sure if someone's serious. What, like skydiving or something? I said, trying to lighten the mood, hoping he'd crack a smile and wave it off as a joke. But he didn't. He just kept looking at me, his expression unreadable, and then he gave this small, enigmatic smile that sent a shiver down my spine. Just think about it, he said quietly. I'll show you what I mean soon. I sat there, my mind racing faster than I could keep up with. What was he talking about? Was it a surprise trip somewhere exotic, something to shake up our routine? Or maybe a risky investment, a leap we'd... It's late, way past midnight, and I'm sitting cross-legged on our bed. The familiar creak of the mattress beneath me, grounding me in this surreal moment. The bedside lamp casts a dim amber glow across the room, barely illuminating the edges of our cluttered dresser and the half-open closet door. My hands are trembling, just slightly, as I hold this letter. Thin, unassuming, but heavy with something I can't yet name. Harrison sits beside me, close enough that I can feel the warmth of his presence, but he's silent, watching me with a quiet intensity that makes my stomach twist. I've been thinking about that kitchen conversation for days, his cryptic words looping in my mind like a broken record. Push the edge, he'd said, and now here we are, with this letter in my hands, the answer to all my restless wondering. I slide my finger under the flap of the envelope, the paper tearing with a soft rasp that feels deafening in the stillness. The handwriting on the page is Harrison's, neat and deliberate, but it's addressed to Kieran, his old friend from college, the one who's been through a rough divorce recently. My eyes scan the first few lines, and then I freeze. My breath catches in my throat, sharp and sudden, like I've been punched. I glance at Harrison, hoping, praying, this is some kind of misunderstanding, but he just nods, a subtle gesture that tells me to keep going. So I do, my voice shaky as I read his words aloud, each one dropping like a stone into the quiet. He wrote to Kieran, proposing something I never could have imagined. He suggested that Kieran spend a night with me, an intimate encounter, something beyond friendship, beyond anything I've ever considered, but only if I wanted it. Only if I said yes. The room seems to tilt as the last word leaves my lips. My hands go cold, the paper crinkling as my grip tightens instinctively. My mind is a storm, 1,000 questions crashing into each other so fast I can't grab hold of a single one. What does this mean? Why would he even think of this? Is this some kind of cruel joke? I turn to Harrison, searching his face for any hint of humor, any crack in his composure that might tell me this isn't real. But his eyes are steady, deep pools of earnestness, and there's no trace of mockery there. He reaches out, his hand resting lightly on my knee, and when he speaks, his voice is soft, almost reverent. This isn't about betrayal, Leona. It's about freedom, trust, exploring parts of ourselves we've never dared to touch. I want you to feel everything, every possibility, if you choose to. I don't know how to respond. My chest feels tight, like I can't get enough air, and I just sit there, the letter still in my hands, staring at the words as if they might rearrange themselves into something that makes sense. Anger flares up first, hot and sharp. How could he even suggest this? But then curiosity creeps in, unbidden, whispering questions I don't want to hear. What would it be like? What does it say about me that I'm even wondering? Fear follows close behind, a cold weight that settles in my gut. What if this breaks us? What if it's a test I'm doomed to fail? And then, buried beneath it all, there's this strange flicker of intrigue, a tiny spark I'm ashamed to even acknowledge. It's too much, all of it colliding inside me, and I can't find a single word to say. For a full week, I don't speak about it. I can't. Every time I try, the words stick in my throat, heavy and jagged. Harrison doesn't push, thank God. He gives me space, but he's still there in the quiet ways that matter, leaving a mug of coffee on the counter for me each morning, his hand brushing mine as we pass in the hallway, a silent reassurance that he's not going anywhere. But the nights are the worst. I lie awake, staring at the ceiling, the darkness pressing down on me as my mind spins. Is this a trap? The drive out to the rented house feels like a journey into a dream I'm not sure I'm ready to have. Harrison's behind the wheel, his left hand steady on the steering, while his right rests gently on my knee, a quiet anchor in the storm of my thoughts. The city lights fade into the rearview mirror as we wind through narrow roads, the landscape shifting to dense clusters of pine trees that loom like silent sentinels in the fading light. Dusk has settled over everything, the sky a deep indigo that seems to swallow the last traces of day. The air coming through the cracked window is crisp, biting at my skin, carrying the earthy scent of the forest. I'm gripping the door handle so tightly my knuckles are pale, my body a coiled spring of tension. My mind keeps circling back to that letter, to Harrison's words about freedom and trust, and I wonder if I'm stepping into something I'll never fully understand. The silence between us isn't uncomfortable, but it's heavy, filled with all the things we haven't said since I finally nodded, after days of wrestling with myself and agreed to come here. As we pull up to the cottage, gravel crunching under the tires, I take in the quaint little place nestled among the trees. It's smaller than I imagined, with weathered wooden siding and a slanted roof, a warm glow spilling from the windows into the twilight. It looks like something out of a storybook, isolated and intimate, a world apart from everything I know. Harrison cuts the engine, and for a moment, we just sit there, the hum of the car replaced by the distant chirp of crickets and the rustle of leaves. He turns to me, his eyes searching mine, and I can see the weight of this moment in his gaze. Then he steps out, comes around to my side, and opens the door for me. My legs feel unsteady as I stand, the cool evening air hitting me like a slap. He walks me to the front porch, his hand at the small of my back, a steadying presence. When we reach the door, he presses a set of keys into my palm, the metal cold against my skin. His voice is low, almost a whisper, as he leans in close. Be real, Leona. That's all I ask. Then he kisses my forehead, a lingering touch that feels like both a goodbye and a promise, before he turns and heads back to the car. I watch, rooted to the spot, as the taillights disappear down the winding path, swallowed by the darkness. I'm alone now, or at least I will be until I step inside. The door creaks as I push it open, and a faint scent of lavender and wood polish greets me, wrapping around me like a memory of somewhere safe. The interior is cozy, all warm tones and soft textures, with a small fireplace crackling in the corner of the living room. And there, sitting in a plush armchair near the fire, is Kieran. My breath catches for a second as I take him in. He's taller than I remember from the few times we've met at gatherings over the years, his frame lean but strong, dressed in a simple navy sweater and jeans. His hazel eyes catch the firelight, kind and open, and there's a gentle smile on his lips that eases something tight in my chest. His dark hair is a little tousled, like he's run his hands through it one too many times, and there's a quiet confidence in the way he sits, one leg crossed over the other, a glass of wine resting on the arm of the chair. He stands as I enter, his movements unhurried, and gestures to the small table by the window where a second glass waits. "Hey, Leona," he says, his voice warm, like we're old friends catching up after too long apart. "I'm glad you're here." I manage a small smile, though my nerves are still buzzing under my skin, and I set my bag down by the door before joining him. We start with small talk, the kind of safe, mundane chatter that feels like a lifeline in this surreal situation. I sip the wine, the rich, fruity taste grounding me as we talk about everything and nothing. Old memories of Harrison's college days, the way the city has changed over the years, even the peculiar charm of this little cottage tucked away in the woods. The fire in the corner crackles softly, its warmth a steady presence as the night deepens outside. Hours slip by, and I barely notice the time passing. The wine glasses are empty now, set aside on the table, and the fire has died down to glowing embers, casting a faint, flickering light across the room. It paints Kieran's face in soft shadows, highlighting the lines of kindness etched there, and I find myself relaxing into the rhythm of our conversation. We've moved to the couch now, sitting closer than we were before, but it doesn't feel forced or uncomfortable. There's an ease between us, a quiet understanding that grows as we share more than just surface stories. I tell him about the dreams I used to have, the ones I tucked away when life got too busy. Writing a book, traveling somewhere wild and untamed, just for the sake of feeling free. He listens with a kind of attention that makes me feel seen, really seen, in a way I hadn't expected. And then he opens up too, his voice low and raw as he talks about the pain of his divorce, the loneliness that followed, the way he's been trying to rebuild himself piece by piece. There's no judgment in this space, no need to hide the messy parts of ourselves, and it's like a weight I didn't know I was carrying starts to lift. At some point, as the night stretches into the early hours, he reaches out, his hand brushing mine. It's not the first time tonight. There was a fleeting touch earlier when he handed me a refill of wine, but this time, I don't pull away. I let his fingers linger against mine, warm and steady, and I feel this quiet surge of connection. It's not about desire in the way I might have feared. It's deeper than that, more tender. It's about being understood, about letting someone see the parts of me I've kept locked away, even from myself. My heart beats a little faster, but it's not from nerves now. It's from the realization that this moment isn't about Harrison, or even Kieran. It's about me. It's about reclaiming something I didn't know I'd buried. A piece of my own spirit that's been waiting to breathe again. I think about Harrison's words, the ones he whispered on the porch before he left. "Be real, Leona." And I think about the freedom he spoke of when he first handed me that letter. The trust he placed in me to explore this, to feel everything without shame. Sitting here now, with Kieran's hand still resting lightly against mine, I feel the guilt I've been wrestling with start to dissolve. It's not a betrayal to be here, to feel this connection. It's a gift, one Harrison gave me with open hands, and for the first time, I let myself embrace it fully. I let go of the fear that this might break something between us, and instead hold on to the belief that it could build something new, something honest, something brave. The night unfolds gently from there, like a slow dance we both know the steps to without ever having practiced. There's no rush, no pressure, just a shared quiet that feels as intimate as any words we've spoken. Kieran's presence is grounding, respectful, never pushing beyond what I'm ready to give. It's in the small things, The way he looks at me with a softness that reminds me of Harrison's trust. The way his voice stays steady and kind, even in the silences. We don't need to fill every moment with talk now. There's a comfort in just being, in letting the embers glow and the darkness outside hold us in this little world of our own. I feel a warmth that's not just from the dying fire, a sense of being alive in a way I hadn't anticipated when I first walked through that door. As the first hints of dawn creep through the cottage window, I'm standing there, wrapped in a soft blanket, watching the sky shift from inky black to a pale, misty gray. The sunrise is... I'm back in our living room now, settled into the familiar embrace of this old couch. The same spot where I've spent countless evenings with a mug of tea in my hands, just letting the world be still. It's early evening, a day after I returned from the cottage, and there's a softness in the air, a kind of quiet that feels almost sacred. The golden light from the table lamp spills across the room, catching the edges of the framed photos on the shelf, and I can hear the faint murmur of life outside, neighbors chatting, a car passing by. But in here, it's just me and the weight of everything I've carried over the past few days, slowly settling into something I can hold. I'm not the same Leona who sat here before, lost in thought about Harrison and the life we've built. I've changed, even if the change is still unfolding inside me, like a flower I didn't know was waiting to bloom. I remember walking through the front door yesterday, my bag slung over my shoulder, my steps heavier than I expected. Harrison was there, waiting for me, standing in the middle of the room like he'd been rooted to the spot since the moment he dropped me off at that cottage. His eyes met mine, searching, scanning every inch of my face, but not with doubt or judgment. It was something deeper, something that felt like he was trying to see straight into my soul. I braced myself for questions, for the inevitable need to explain what had happened, to justify the choice I made. But he didn't ask a single thing, not one word about where I'd been or what I'd felt. Instead, he crossed the room in 2 long strides, his arms opening before I could even set my bag down. He pulled me into a tight embrace, his warmth enveloping me, grounding me in a way I didn't know I needed until that very second. His breath was warm against my ear as he whispered, "You're even more beautiful than yesterday. I feel it in you." Those words, they broke something open inside me. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, hot and sudden. But they weren't tears of sadness or guilt. They were relief, pure and overwhelming, washing over me like a wave. I didn't have to explain. I didn't have to defend. He trusted me, completely, and that trust was a lifeline I hadn't realized I was reaching for until it was there in his arms. I buried my face in his shoulder, letting myself melt into him. The familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the faint trace of laundry detergent on his shirt filling my senses. We stood there for what felt like forever, just holding each other. The silence between us saying more than any words could. I felt the tension I'd been carrying for days, weeks, maybe, start to unravel, thread by thread, until all that was left was this deep, unshakable knowing that we were still us. Maybe even more us than before. When we finally pulled back, I looked into his eyes, and there was this quiet strength there, the same steadiness that's always been my anchor. He smiled, just a small curve of his lips, but it was enough to tell me everything was going to be okay. More than okay. Over the next few days, I've noticed how things have shifted between us, subtle at first, but growing stronger with every passing moment. We touch more now, not just in passing, but with intention. His hand lingering on my back as we move through the kitchen, my fingers brushing his arm when we sit close on this very couch. Our gazes hold longer, like we're seeing each other anew, peeling back layers we didn't even know were there. There's a rawness to the way we speak, too. a willingness to say the things we might have held back before. Last night, over a simple dinner of pasta and a shared glass of wine, I found myself telling him about a fear I've carried for years, one I'd never voiced out loud. How I've always worried I'm not enough, not for him, not for the life we've dreamed of. He listened, really listened, and then reached across the table to take my hand, and with a gentle squeeze, he assured me that in his eyes, I had always been more than enough. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.